What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are First. Welcome in to our season opening edition of the NFL Weekly. Folks, we made it. The long summer of the offseason is over. We got through March Madness. We got through the Olympics. We're getting through baseball. And it is Thursday, September 5th, the date we've all been looking forward to since second Monday in February when we woke up and realized, we got a long time before Sunday NFL Sundays are here. Well, we have made it. And of course, with me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. We've got one more racing weekend at Del Mar started this afternoon. The horses are running for the finish line one more weekend. We got the Padres running down the home stretch to see what they can make happen in September. They've got a magic number, which is kind of fun to watch. And now we've got the beginning of the NFL season. They're in the gate, as we say when we talk about when it's time to do the horse racing talk. You know, it's post time, kids, and it's going to be bell's going to ring here in about 2 hours or hour and a half, something like that.
Yep, just about. We are recording here Thursday, September 5th. Full disclosure, the plan was to record on Wednesday. However, I had some car issues that need to be taken care of. So the Kansas City-Baltimore game, you'll have to kind of deal with it yourself there. But, look, it's week one. It's the first game of the season. If you're ever going to take a day off or a game off, just enjoy today. I really do think Kansas City Baltimore is going to be a very good game. I wouldn't be surprised to see Baltimore get the win, but it is a nice little segue. We obviously aren't going to talk about that game, but we do have to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. They have won the last 2 Super Bowls. They are looking to do something no one has ever done in the Super Bowl era, and that's win 3 straight Super Bowls. I think we've seen some 3 in 4 years, but never 3 in a row. Kansas City has that opportunity, and a lot of people, like myself, think that is a very, very real possibility. So I do think this is an appropriate question because of how dominant the Chiefs have been. Raider Jim, I'll put it to you. You taking Kansas City or are you taking the field?
I think there are teams out there that can definitely compete with and push Kansas City to the limit. They still take it very personal. They're not happy if they win 2 Super Bowls and if they don't win that third one. They're going to take it real personal. And as I said last week when we did our first talk about NFL football, they have not plateaued yet. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes has not plateaued yet. They've got as good a leader with Coach Reed, as the Patriots did when they were at their best with Belichick. He sits back, he lets them play. He knows how to get his coaches to formulate, he formulates it. He discusses it with his coaches, and then they execute it. Okay, everybody show back up on Sunday. Make sure your parts are ready to go. They're like Formula One racing. They just all of a sudden, there's all these guys in the pit. These guys do tires. These guys do this. This guy does this. This guy does that. They got to be in sync. And if they're not in sync, they're not going to win the race. Guess what? Kansas City is still there. Do I see, believe it or not, in the AFC, I think Miami might be their big challenge. Not so much Baltimore. Baltimore, I love Baltimore. I like Lamar Jackson. Has he taken too many hits? Has he, you don't get faster year in and year out. The legs don't keep going like they used to. However, he's also a world-class athlete as far as I'm concerned when it comes to playing the quarterback position. And on the NFC side, wow, San Francisco, Detroit, they could give Kansas City a run for their money as well if they matched up in the big one. Interesting to see what Detroit brings to the field this year on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, we know what they can do. And the 49ers, let me tell you, they're kind of like on one hand, they are like, oh, hey, it's the 49ers. And on the other hand, they just kind of quietly go about and do their job. I think they're going to get a little more challenge from Seattle than everybody thinks. But your original question, can anyone dethrone Kansas City? They're out there. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of things have to go like correctly. You brought up Miami, and I like that pick. However, I can't see Miami going on the road in January. I just can't see it. So that puts a lot of onus on them to essentially get the number one, I could say, or 2 seed. But even then, like, you're kind of hoping that someone else takes the big dog out for you. I just think we saw it last year. I think it was in Kansas City. Yeah, it was in Kansas City. It was that night game. It was, I think, -3 degrees. And here comes, like I said, your Ferrari runs real well in South Beach. But winter in the Midwest, you're going to want to find an SUV. And that's what the Chiefs are. They're an all-terrain vehicle.
All purpose.
Yeah, they could do whatever you put in front of them. They might not go faster or just as fast, but they will get to the finish line. I actually really do believe heavily in Baltimore, but it's always the caveat, like you said. I just looked up, because unfortunately that's what you have to do. But you look up, okay, who's the backup quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens? I was thinking Tyler Huntley was still there, which is, I don't like when people say a poor man's blank, but I mean, for the sake of this argument, Tyler Huntley was a poor man's Lamar Jackson. You didn't need to change the offense for Tyler Huntley. It's not going to run at the same RPMs, but you can run the same stuff. He understands, and he can excel at it to the best of his ability. Josh Johnson, who, I mean, has been in the NFL. I mean, felt like he was like backing up Brett Favre back in the day. I think he played here at USD. One of Jim Harbaugh's first finds, possibly, once again. So he's not really that mobile guy. Obviously, if Lamar goes, you could probably say it about any NFL team. Oh, if so-and-so quarterback goes down, that team's in trouble. But I think Baltimore is the most reliant on the quarterback. And that's even considering Kansas City, because look, I know Mahomes is Mahomes, and this is kind of crazy 5-6 years later, me saying, but at the very least, Kansas City does have a backup in Carson Wentz. And I know the old eye rolls and the laughing. It's fine. I understand it. But in the thick of things, I would rather have Carson Wentz than Josh Johnson. So obviously neither of these teams want to come to that situation, but it is something you have to deal with. And you kind of hit the nail on the head with the Lions. I think the Lions are the biggest. Everything in the NFC North is a question mark. The Bears are a question mark. The Packers are a question mark. Can Love keep it going? And obviously the Lions, like, did we see a bit of a flash in the pan? Because we are going to need to see this defense make strides. They're not sneaking up on anybody this year. Defense has to be better. And the Vikings, they got their injury issues, so they're a bit of a question mark as well. But I do look at the Niners as a team that could possibly compete with them. And of course my Eagles. But at the end of the day, I think when the chips are down and, the proverbial gun is to my head, I'm taking Mahomes and the Chiefs. I just look at what this team puts together. They do it in so many different ways as well. Obviously last year was the first time that I can really remember that the defense kind of took a step forward and said, hey, you know what? There are going to be some games where for whatever reason, the offense isn't clicking. We're going to keep this to a 24-21 game. Back in the day, sometimes you weren't able to do that with the Kansas City defense, and you got the best coach in the game, Andy Reid. Now that Belichick is gone, I don't think anybody can argue that Andy Reid is the best coach.
Absolutely.
In the game. And he's doing it the right way. And like I said, I've said it all off season, and I hopefully won't say it into the regular season because he'll be quiet, but Xavier Worthy, the fact they got Xavier Worthy, that could be a game changer for this franchise. And the Buffalo Bills, I think it was the Bills, either 31 or 32, trading out of that spot. Just make things a little more difficult for yourself and Josh Allen. But yeah, I can't see, even if for whatever reason, because I do expect Baltimore to win tonight. I do. I think Kansas City might start 2-2. I think it's going to take a while for them to figure out the best way to use all their weapons. But once they do, watch out. Watch out. But any final thoughts there on that topic, or do you want to dive into the game previews?
Only on the Carson Wentz thing, fabulous backup. I think if you're gonna, it's that thing. If you're gonna have a backup, you might as well do that. Just keep in mind, he's no Gardner Minshew. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
Amen.
I'll leave it at that.
That's a heck of a quarterback room. If you could have Carson Wentz backing up Gardner Minshew, I tell you, that is a Philly fan's dream right there. But yeah, it's look, you're right. If Carson Wentz is starting for you, not ideal, but in a pinch, could do a lot worse than Carson Wentz. Yeah. So with that being said, time to dive into our game previews for the week. Obviously, if this is the first time you are listening, welcome. But we always do kind of take more of a gambling angle on these podcasts, especially with the NFL. However, a little bit of a caveat. I know for myself, I give myself at least 3 or 4 weeks to kind of get a lay of the land before I put some money down. I do track some bets. I do put some in, 5 or 6, just kind of on my tracking app, just to see how I'm doing, see if I'm, reading everything correctly. So, just throwing that little caveat out there. It's not like we tell you, oh, this is what we're going to bet. Myself personally, that's mainly a tracking bet right now, but we are going to start chronologically to the best of our ability. Of course, this is the Friday game. Yes, the Friday game. Oh, why did the Eagles have to draw the Friday opener in Brazil? So many things to get into off the field and scheduling and decision-making and thought processes. We're going to leave that alone because we do want to watch the game later and I might go on a 3-hour tirade. So for the side of the game, we do have technically the Eagles being the home team, I believe. But they are 2.5 point favorites. Obviously, betting wise, this is a neutral site. This game is in Brazil. Before I do dive into this game, I do just want to give my thoughts on the Eagles. I wasn't able to last week. Obviously, an offseason that I do believe Howie Roseman really did hit it out of the park. I think we got better defensively, thank goodness. I think we brought in some coordinators that are established. I think that was a big issue for the Eagles last year. And bringing in Jahan Dotson towards the end to really round out this offensive weapon core where you added Saquon Barkley, you bring back Devonta Smith, you bring back A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and now you have Jahan Dotson, who is probably the best number 3 receiver in the league. All eyes now are on Jalen Hurts. He got paid. He wasn't terrible last year, but he obviously regressed. And the question mark as well at the head coaching position. Can Nick Sirianni put his big boy pants on and be a professional and not walk down tunnels screaming at cameras, screaming at fans about what now and blah, blah, blah. Week 10. If you want to do that Super Bowl when you're holding the trophy, you do whatever you want. Carte blanche as far as I'm concerned, sir. But week 10 and that crap, I want to see a lot of maturity out of Nick Sirianni. I don't care about his play calls or anything like that. I want to see a more professional, more calm, better demeanor out of my head coach on the sideline. I think if those things go correctly, I don't see any reason why we are not talking about the Philadelphia Eagles as a top 2 or 3 seed and probably talking about this team heading into the NFC Championship. However, it is September. A lot of things got to get there, but those are my thoughts on the Eagles there. Moving on to the game at hand. Again, this game is in Brazil. It will be at 5:15 Pacific, 8:15 Eastern. Do the math in between. I believe this game will only streaming on Peacock, which is unfortunate, but I will say no free ads. They're not a sponsor, but Peacock is an incredible streaming service. They have a lot of good stuff on there. So wouldn't be the worst purchase of your life if you do want to watch this game. I'm sure there's plenty of streaming apps out there that you might be able to sneak a peek on. But for this one, the Eagles are going to be 2.5 point favorites against the Packers. The over-under does sit at 48.5. I'm a little nervous about this game. I don't put a whole lot of stock in week 1 games, especially when you're going up against a team like the Packers. I don't believe it, but there are people saying that, hey, the Packers are a bigger threat to win the NFC than the Eagles. All right. I mean, that's where my line ends, but I don't think that they are. But we are going to see a big answer a lot of questions. Myself personally, I think the biggest question mark for the Eagles gameplay-wise is how they are going to deal with the loss of Jason Kelce. I think Cam Jurgens is going to be a fine center, but you are replacing the best to ever do it, at least at your franchise. So that's going to be a big-time issue. I think overall, myself, this would be what I call an emotional hedge. This is, give me the Packers plus whatever. I think it's plus maybe 125 on the money line. Put some money there. If my Eagles lose, at least I made a little bit of money. If I lose that money, hey, at least the Eagles won. That's the way I would play it there. But I do think the Packers have a very good shot of winning this game. The 2.5 always scares me. That's kind of like essentially money line for me, like minus 2.5. Like you might as well just go find a money line. You don't want to get hit with the last second field goal. But I would say Green Bay, pretty good here. I will say the over on the 48.5. I think this is a little bit of a reactionary to what the Eagles did in the offseason. I think the Eagles defense got better, but I don't think they got better to the point where they're going to be able to keep this. I think this is going to be a 28-24 type game. I think we're going to see some scoring. It might start slow, but I do think we see some scoring. The field conditions, that's something else to keep an eye on. I don't know what, I thought it was in Rio de Janeiro because hand up, that's the only city I really know in Brazil. And I mean, it's the Christ the Redeemer statue, but this is actually going to be in Sao Paulo. Right. So once again, Brazil's a big country. I don't know how that affects things. Maybe you know better than I do, but just some things. This is a game. Just enjoy it. It's a weird Brazil game on a Friday. If you got to play it, but I think you all should just watch and enjoy. I do like the over though. That is one thing. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, interesting game. Again, it's in Sao Paulo. It's going to be about 68 degrees at kickoff time. No rain, nothing like that. Could be a little humid, but that's about it. It should be a fairly comfortable game, though. My concern with the over on this game is these guys are tired.
Yeah.
There's no way to beat the jet lag. And here they are going into the game 1 of the season. And I can't tell you how many clips and reels I saw of them interviewing the guys getting on the plane or waiting to get on the plane. And what are you going to do? One guy saying, I'm just going to stay up for the whole time until we get there. Some guys said they brought books, downloaded movies, did all that stuff. I'll tell you what, that could take a toll on these guys because they just left this morning, I believe, or yesterday. And
the Eagles arrived yesterday. I don't know the
Packers.
They
arrived yesterday. Okay. And we'll see how everybody acclimates to that because there is going to be a period where they need to adjust. Green Bay, love Jordan Love. I think he's great. I think he's one of the best things that's happened to that program in a long, long time. Love the way he played last year. Here's the problem. And here's what I think, believe it or not, one of the factors is going to be the running game. Their running game is going to be Josh Jacobs. Take it from a guy who's up close and personal as a Raider fan with the performance of Josh Jacobs. His best season with the Raiders was his contract year. After the contract year, guess what? Then he's holding. He did the bit where he held out. He didn't perform very well. For him to think he's going to go rolling into Green Bay and set everything on fire. You said it when you spoke about the Miami being, the Ferrari, and it's great down in South Beach. But when you get it up into the snow and the frozen tundra, you need a different set of wheels. Josh Jacobs is going to have issues. Now, back to the game at hand, I don't think he's going to perform that well against Philadelphia. But on the other side of the ball, you've got a renewed Saquon Barkley. You saw what Barkley could do with the likes of the New York Giants. Imagine what he's going to be able to do with the Philadelphia Eagles. And that offensive line, understanding that they lost one of the best centers in the game, I guarantee you, it may not be necessarily just a plug and a play, but they thought long and hard, and it was a calculated move to put whoever they have put into that position. That is the center. That's the core of your offense. A captain on the, calling the plays, if you will, for those linemen. And I think that's going to be one of the big differences. The other one is I think they did do very well on the defensive side to bolster that. And I think that's where Jordan Love's going to be a little surprised. I think they're going to get at Love because Green Bay's offensive line, I don't think they're going to be that good, especially against Philadelphia. And I can't remember his name. Philadelphia picked up a great cornerback in the offseason. And that too.
CJ Gardner-Johnson?
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah.
And that is that's going to be a difference. So when all is said and done and the dust settles, everybody's going to be tired when they get out onto that field, and the adrenaline's going to kick in for a while. But if it's like drinking a Red Bull or one of those energy shot things that I don't drink, but I understand, oh, it's great when it hits you, but then at some point you're walking around and all of a sudden you're a zombie. You're like, what happened? So could happen on both sides of the ball, both teams. I think Philadelphia covers the 2.5, but like you, at 2.5, I'm just going to go money line. Over under, I think it's going to go under, and I think it's just going to be because it's fatigue and everybody getting used. Barkley might run to Mark Barkley again. I think he's going to be the difference here as far as keeping the Eagles' offense on the field and maybe racking up some points. But I think Philadelphia's defense is going to make a statement.
Yeah, I tell you, I think I'm trying to temper my expectations, because if the Eagles come out and they look good on offense and on defense, watch out. Like, that might be I'm trying to be humble Brandon over here, but I don't know. Like I said, like if they come out and because I do, obviously the draft getting Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mart. I don't know, the kid out of Toledo. I don't know why anyways, and then obviously the linebacker addition of, Devin White and stuff like that. But going back to what we talked about with Cam Jurgens, and I think one of the good things that the Eagles have done is this has been the plan for the last 3 years. It's kind of like the center in waiting. Cam Jurgens has been playing guard, but I do believe it's always been the plan. Okay, when Jason does decide it's time, this is our center. And I think that's the right way to go about it, rather than go through the draft, because I think becoming a center in, a rookie center, that's not easy, especially if you have to replace a guy like Jason Kelce. So I do think they've gone about it the right way, and now it's just time for Cam to kind of. And again, like no one should expect him to live up to Jason Kelce, but if he can go out and be a top 10, top 5 center, that's all we can ask. So with that, we move on. We are going to stay in the NFC East. It is the Minnesota Vikings. These will all be Sunday games. We're getting back to normal here, folks. These will be Sunday games. Minnesota, the Vikings have some injury issues, but they're heading into New Jersey to face the New York Giants. They will be 1.5-point favorites with an over-under of 41. Look, this is a game between two teams that I don't think can truthfully believe they have playoff aspirations. Minnesota, maybe, but definitely not New York with Daniel Jones. I think Brian Daboll's a good coach. I think Kevin O'Connell's a better coach. I mean, Kevin O'Connell got this team to 7-10 last year without Kirk Cousins. They were running around with Josh Dobbs for a while, and it was wild to see what he was able to do. I mean, I remember he was literally telling Josh Dobbs not only the play, but okay, say the play, everyone leaves, and he is still telling Josh Dobbs, okay, these are the routes that this guy's going to run and that guy's going to run. And he was still able to make that work. So in this case, I know they are, road favorites and all that stuff. In this case, give me Minnesota money line. I just think Minnesota overall is a better team. I think Malik Neighbors is a good wide receiver. It's going to be a good pickup for the Giants. However, it's like having, a Mercedes-Benz, but not having a driveway. Like, that's really cool, but you still got to street park it, and you got to deal with, maybe someone breaking into it. That's what happens when you have a really good wide receiver, but a quarterback who is, well, Daniel Jones. I don't want to be too negative, but yeah, we all know, we all have our thoughts on Daniel Jones. But I do like the Vikings to win this game. Again, -1.5. Okay. More than likely, I don't want to get stuck with a missed extra point or something like that. And that's what kills me and gets it only a 1-point victory. So give me Minnesota money line. In terms of the over under, I do like the over here. I do think we are, 20 or 41 points. I could see Minnesota getting enough, 20, 28 points, does a lot of the heavy lifting. 28-13 gets us to where we need to be. I could see that being the case. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Vikings in New Jersey to face the Giants.
Boy, the Vikings looked like it was theirs to lose this season, or at least be very, very competitive going into the offseason and spring training even. Talk about the injury bugs, including J.J. McCarthy. So now they are going to rely on Sam Darnold. I don't know who backs up Sam Darnold at this point. The offensive line for Minnesota, questionable. The defense, questionable. And again, the only thing about it is they're playing the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants, the way the analogy I would give you here is, you ever play the game Yahtzee and at some point you're down to this threat, you look at the dice on the table and you go, what the hell? So you just pick up all the dice, put them back in the cup and roll it all again and go, hey, look, we actually got a full house. I think that might be the case for the Giants this year. I think, okay, we all know Barkley's gone. Oh no, what are we going to do? Doesn't matter, he's gone. They have Devin Singletary. He'll be fine. He's going to be a fine replacement. Part of the reason he'll be a fine replacement is they have made moves and revamped their offensive line. They've got new offensive schemes that they're going to go with. Daniel Jones is still Daniel Jones, and he's the one that's under the microscope. He's got to play better, and he knows he's got to play better. And perhaps all this new personnel is going to make him feel better, perform better. And was it his ACL that he messed up last year?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And as long as they can keep him from getting smacked around, and as you said, all eyes are really going to be on Malik Neighbors. They're expecting big things out of that kid. If they can give Jones time, if he can have the right mental ability, the focus, and if he can throw it on target to a guy like Neighbors is that kid who comes out from college and doesn't miss a beat, doesn't miss a step. And against an ailing Minnesota Viking team, if you will, I think the Giants have a real good chance. I'm again going in. If you look at the schedule before all the injuries happened, nobody would have said, "Oh yeah, well that's going to be a 1.5 point game." No, people would have said Minnesota, by 4, 5, but it's 1.5. But they're also playing in New York, so. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and take the Giants on the money line on this one. And like you, I think it's going to go over.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Daniel Jones, he 2 years ago, he that team was able to kind of put that magic together. And I've heard plenty of Giants fans who kind of lament the fact, and they go, it was fun in the moment, but how much did it cost us? Because they ended up paying Daniel Jones that offseason. And who knows, maybe he figures it out this year. But at the moment, it is the worst contract in football.
Yeah.
And it was all because of that kind of magical run that essentially you got a playoff win and then you got demolished by Philadelphia on national TV in the divisional round. So was it worth it? I would say no. But again, in the moment, everyone loves it. And who knows? They might have still paid Daniel Jones a crazy amount of money regardless. So hindsight's always 20/20. But moving on to the Cowboys side of things, they are heading to Cleveland, and they will actually be underdogs in this one, as the Browns are going to be 2.5 point favorites. The over-under sits even lower at 40.5. First and foremost, look, I know we have two really good defenses. Cleveland might, I think last year, at least statistically, might have been the best defense. I get that. But both offenses, and I know Nick Chubb won't be here, but both offenses, I think, have enough firepower. Oh, and I just wanted to finish up. You brought up Sam Darnold's backup. It's Nick Mullins. So it's like the Niners quarterback room from like 3 years ago is now currently in Minnesota. But anyways, back to Dallas and Cleveland. The Browns are 2.5 point favorites. 40.5 is the over under. I like the over here again. 21-20. Cashes it. I can very easily see both of these teams getting 3 touchdowns and it not even being like a situation where it's like, oh my gosh, what's up with the defenses? I think both of these offenses, even on average days, can put 3 touchdowns together in a game. And in terms of the line, I like Dallas in this situation. I know it sounds crazy, but look, a lot of times it comes down to quarterback play for me. And Dak Prescott isn't terribly high on my list, but he's higher on my list than what I saw out of Deshaun Watson last year. And this would change if Nick Chubb was playing. Who knows when he'll be back? I heard some rumors that, he was probably good enough to start week 1, but they want to take it slow. I get that. totally understand it, but that's a huge miss. I like Dallas on the road here as the underdog. Cleveland, they'll have the home field, no doubt about it, but you know the Cowboy fans always travel. They're everywhere. They're like cockroaches, so it doesn't matter how many you get rid of. There's 15 more that are going to pop right back up. So I don't know. I don't fully understand this line. This is the one that, again, this is why week one I go in, Sunday morning. I'm like, oh, that's the one for me. And then Cleveland goes out and blows them out. So that's why I'm not sure. But I really do feel like Dallas is going to keep this one close. And I like Dallas money line. And I also really like the over. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Dallas. I want to see what $136 million wide receiver looks like in CD Lamb. He missed the entire spring training, if you will, off season. So we'll see what he comes into the game with. I think he'll be ready to play. He'll be very rested. But again, you got the forecast, 2024 forecast. Cleveland has been ranked the number 2 defense. Dallas is the number 4 defense. But the number 2 defense, wow, I'll tell you what, my thought is that by the time the game is over, people are going to wonder if Myles Garrett was supposed to be wearing a Cowboys jersey because he's going to be in the backfield so much. I think he is going to wreak havoc. And the other thing is, it's one of those situations where it's kind of like the Max Crosby thing. They have to focus so much on a Myles Garrett. What about the other guys? They got other edge guys that they can send, from half a step back or on the other side of the ball, or shift him inside even. He doesn't have to be a defensive end. So we'll see what happens. But I think Myles Garrett, Watson, if Deshaun Watson can play 85% like he used to play, he's going to bring the offense. He's got Brandon Cook out there as the wide receiver, his target. On the other side of that ball, Dallas, their big cornerback, Deron Bland, I believe is his name, is going to be out. So they're going to start a true rookie. So, wow, you're going to do that in a game like this? That could be dangerous. So we'll see what happens there. I think Dallas's offense is going to have a little bit of issue. They have those games. Who was it that they went out and they got absolutely torched? I don't remember if it was last year or not.
Was it Green Bay?
Is that the one where they gave up like 50 points?
Ooh, you're talking about Dallas, right?
Yes.
I don't think it was 50. I'm trying to think.
There was a bad game, and it was one of those where going into it, they were the favorite. They should have won. Yeah. And I know they're not the favorite here. I just don't know that they're going to be able to penetrate the Cleveland defense. And I think Cleveland's offense is going to be a little better than you and I both think. Because it's marginal, but they don't have. You hear Nick Chubb's out, and then it's like, well, there goes that. But hey, again, what an insult to those guys that have to step in there and play that position now, because sometimes that's all the motivation they need. It happened one time when they brought in a kid named Lou Gehrig to play first base. And everybody's going, who the hell's that?
Never gave it up.
And he never gave it up. So in this one, because it is a home game and Cleveland is just, hoping for please get us back to the playoffs. I like Cleveland in the money line on this one because, again, anything under 3, I'm probably going to take the money line. And like you, I think it's going to be over for sure.
Yeah, this might be one of the more
fun games.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, of all the non-primetime standalone games, this one is, especially with the Cowboys too, because normally the Cowboys just automatically get Sunday Night Football in week 1. But yeah, this is a really interesting game. And I'm really kind of excited to see, how it's going to go and how the Cowboys, you brought up CeeDee Lamb. The entire offseason, it was the drama of CeeDee Lamb. And it seemed like Jerry Jones was like, no, we're good. And literally left it until the last possible moment. Obviously that's not exactly how it went down, but sometimes I feel like Jerry Jones tries to do things the hard way just so that he could say he did it the hard way, which I guess that works, but I'd rather do something the easy way and get it done right and sign your players, and they can actually be there for mini camps and training camps. But what do I know? But it's going to be a very, very interesting game. Very surprised or intrigued to see. And I will say Kevin Stefanski is a very underrated coach. I don't think we talk about him enough for what he's been able to do for that franchise to kind of like stabilize it. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns as a 2.5-point favorite week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. I think 4 years ago, I would have laughed in your face if you said that. So do have to give him a lot of credit as well. It's going to be a very, very good game. Make sure you check it out. Moving on to the last game in the NFC East side of things. Unfortunately, it might be a good game, but on paper, it doesn't look like one. It is the Washington Commanders. They're heading down south to the heat of Tampa to face the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are going to be 3-point favorites. The over-under sits at 44. Look, I think of all the teams that have kind of turned a corner, or at least, the last 2 or 3 years, the Washington Commanders by far have kind of had to get rid of the most toxicity of all of them. Obviously, you had Dan Snyder, and then we had the situation with Ron Rivera. I don't think Ron Rivera was a toxic person. That's not what I'm saying. But the environment in which that was happening was toxic, mainly because of Dan Snyder and the way he ran things. That's done. Those excuses are out the window. You have a quarterback who I was a little surprised. I like Sam Howell. I know he had his warts. They gave up on him pretty quickly, but they found something in Jaden Daniels, and I can't say that I can blame them for seeing it. I mean, he looked incredible at LSU. I think his throwing motion needs to be tweaked a little bit, but if Phillip Rivers taught us anything, if it works for you, it works. Now, there are some other things. The weapons are the big question mark. Caleb Williams in Chicago, he's got weapons wherever you look. I think he's got DeAndre Swift in the backfield. He got Keenan Allen. He's got Rome Odunze, and a pretty good defense. Unfortunately, Jaden Daniels, I think he's going to need to find some other weapons, especially with the Commanders getting rid of Jahan Dotson. It's going to make things a little more difficult. In terms of this game, however, I do think this is going to be a little tough for Jaden Daniels to kind of debut in. I know he played in the South. I don't know the exact weather report, but it's 100 degrees here in San Diego today. So I have to imagine we're going to be in for a pretty hot day on Sunday in Tampa as well. Not an ideal situation. And overall, I think Baker Mayfield has more weapons. He's been here. He's done the thing, or he's been around, if you will. I just think overall, my lean is towards Tampa. And look, once again, if you're new here, you're going to learn really quickly. Anytime Brandon sees a line of 3, whether it's plus or minus, you can pretty much bet, I would say, by a half a point. I take Tampa minus 2.5 in this one. In terms of the over under 44, I like the under here. I think we're going to see 2 teams that probably are going to feel each other out. Neither of these teams want to throw the ball 40 times a game. I think they want to get the run game established, especially in the weather, play that ball control, keep the other team's defense on the field for as long as possible. I think we stay under. I can't believe that this game is 44 and the Minnesota-New York game is 41. But, once again, I also started the podcast saying, big caveat, no one really knows a whole lot week 1. We know who's on what team, but we don't know what to expect. So, but Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Washington heading to face the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I'm with you. This isn't like the hallmark game of the week, but it'll be good to see what Jaden Daniels can do in his first regular season game in the NFL. Now, let me start on the Tampa Bay side. On the Tampa Bay side, I think they're coming in the best possible position. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. True. But Baker Mayfield and the boys, they're in pretty good shape. And, he's got different people calling his plays for him right now, but I think he just has to go out and execute. He has to be feeling real good about this year, considering how his season started last year and where he ended up. And made it to the playoffs. And he became, I bet he didn't have to buy a drink all off season if he hung around the Tampa Bay area. It's one of those situations. Now, so Tampa Bay, Washington, they've got this kid, Jaden Daniels. two-headed monster. A lot of people even refer to him as like the second coming of Lamar Jackson because he's got the legs. He can do that. Yeah, but he doesn't have the offensive line. And he's playing against some real tough people. And also, they've got Jerzon Newton, their hotshot defensive back, out. He's injured. Darren Payne, defensive tackle, probably not playing at 100%. If he plays, he may be out. Brandon Coleman, the left tackle, who's supposed to watch Jaden Daniels' blind side, whoops, he's not going to play. And if, for heaven forbid, something happened to Jaden Daniels, guess what? His backup, Marcus Mariota, can't play because he's got a chest injury. Oof. So they're going to the third guy if something happens to Jaden Daniels. And for those reasons right there, I'm saying go ahead and take Tampa Bay and that half point because both of us, Brandon and I, think a lot on a lot of things. And again, when you see that 3, it's going to be 2.5 for us. Take Tampa Bay minus 2.5 and go under 44 because it's going to be 24. It's probably going to be 24-17 by the end of it. And there you are. That's it.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one. I think for Washington, I think Washington is going to continue to progress throughout the season. I think by the end of it, we will be pleasantly surprised by what we see. I could see this being a 6, 7, maybe even 8-win team, but it's going to take some time. Sometimes you are going to kind of have to. I think this is one of those teams that's going to start maybe 2-6, 2-7, and we all kind of start writing them off. And they're going to steal one against the Cowboys or maybe even the Eagles, or maybe they'll steal one against the Niners, and then by the time we look up and they went 6-11 after starting whatever 2-8, like, okay, they figured it out. Kind of what we saw a few years back with the Lions, where they kind of started to build towards something. They didn't make the playoffs that year. And then the following year, we saw what they did last year. So this is going to be an interesting watch for Washington throughout the season. I think it's going to be a little rough week 1, though. And that's kind of to be expected for a rookie quarterback. But moving on, we are going to switch jurisdictions. It is going to be time to talk about the AFC West. We are going to start out in Los Angeles. The Las Vegas Raiders, they're heading to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. Chargers are 3-point favorites. The over-under is 40. On this podcast, nobody starts the Raider talk before Raider Jim. So, Mr. Martinez, what are your thoughts? Raiders at Chargers.
Let me tell you how close this one is. And, the Chargers get the -3, which is basically the home point advantage, the home team advantage. So they are the favorites by the 3 points. Preseason rankings. Las Vegas Raiders, number 15 defense, which is good because the way I look at it going into week 1, if you are 16-32, that's a question mark and you really have to pay attention. If you're 15 and above, then still you got to watch. But when the Raiders have always been in the 20s and high 20s rankings, and to move up to the 15, that's not bad. So they're number 15. Chargers are number 16. I really don't know how well the defense for the Chargers is going to play. I don't know much about their secondary right now, even. On the offensive side of the ball, and this is surprising to me, the Raiders are coming in. Gardner Minshew is the quarterback. They had all this controversy. Is it going to be O'Donnell? Is it going to, or O'Connell? Is it going to be him? And they settled that finally. But on the Charger side of the ball with Justin Herbert, their offense is coming in preseason rank or start of the season ranking 22. That is really surprising to me. Now I know they lost some of Herbert's weapons, and he's got plantar fasciitis still, I think is what he's dealing with, and they're saying he's fine, he can play. If he's not 100% and he's not mobile in that pocket, he's going to have an issue, because not only is Max Crosby going to be doing his thing that he does, they picked up a couple good defensive linemen. They did pick up at least one good cornerback. That is not to say their secondary still may not look like Swiss cheese at times, but I really think that enough people have looked and that they've got this early ranking of 15 as, hey, these guys have improved. They also, so I think the Raiders are going to come out, have a pretty good game plan. Unfortunately, That was the game I did the least amount of reading up on because I'm always going to go the same way. If you want to give me the Raiders plus 3.5 on the road, I'm going to take that all day long. And I think it's going to be over 40 because I think both teams are going to put some points on the board. No matter who ends up when the dust settles, who wins the game, I think it's going to be something like a 28-24.
I agree. You might not find a bigger Minshew maniac than myself. Although I do think, hey, I'm giving him 2 months. There's a chance Raider Jim starts showing up with the handlebar mustache.
Might have to.
He starts 6-2. We might get some Minshew maniac on this pod. But the Chargers are an incredibly top-heavy team. This is a offense that is obviously highlighted by Justin Herbert, very good quarterback. Rashawn Slater, I think, is a good tackle. And I think Joe Alt is going to be a good tackle for the next 10 to 15 years. He's the rookie out of Notre Dame. Then on the defensive side, you got names like Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Asante Samuel Jr., and Derwin James Jr. Derwin James is incredible. Can he stay healthy? But after those names, I mean, you look at this wide receiver room, their wide receiver 1 is Josh Palmer.
See?
And Lad McConkey, who I'm not even sure is a real person. Lad McConkey. That's like a troll name when you ask the internet to vote for something, and that's what they come up with. So I am not high on the Chargers. I don't know why so many people are. I mean, I listen to people and they're like, yeah, Chargers are they're gonna challenge the Chiefs. In what pace? Like at the coin toss when they play? I think that's the only way the Chargers challenge the Chiefs. I would not be surprised to see the Chargers finish below the Broncos. I don't see it here. I think the Harbaugh kind of juice is there. The Chargers will get good, but Harbaugh couldn't just recruit all his boys this past offseason. It's going to take him a while to build this smash mouth offense. I like the Raiders money line here, but yeah, by a half a point, or to get plus 3.5. But I think the Raiders win this game. The other part of it too, I would love to get just one question to an odds maker. When it comes to the Chargers being at home, are we still giving 3 points? Because if you watch Charger games and you honestly believe that is a home field advantage other than the paint on the field, I don't know what you're watching.
Good point.
And the way it gets exacerbated the most is this weekend. LA's team, it's not the Rams, it's not the Chargers. I'm sorry, it's the Raiders. It's been the Raiders for the last 30 years. It's going to be the Raiders for the next 30 years. It's going to be 60, maybe 70% Raiders fans. Maybe because it's the home opener, it helps the Chargers a little bit, but we're going to see so much silver and black. So, yeah, I just don't know. I know you had brought up, and it is the 3 points for the home field. But in this situation, but it has to be, because you can't sit here and tell me in a neutral site, I think this team is better. I don't know. I am very down on the Chargers. I like the Raiders in this one. And like you, I do see some points being scored here. I think Justin Herbert is good enough to find weapons and make some weapons out of it. But this is going to be a very frustrating season, I think, for Justin Herbert. I think he's going to be – it's very similar to what we saw to Patrick Mahomes last year with his frustrations with his wide receivers. I don't know if they'll be as that magnified, but it's going to be very similar there. But this is going to be
the Rams and the Raiders own Los Angeles.
100%. Yeah, not even close. I think USC and UCLA are higher in that list.
Oh, absolutely.
And we might even get into the Mater Days and the Boscos and the Long Beach Polys. But you know what? I don't want to poop on the Chargers too much. We got 18 weeks to do that. Let's pace ourselves, folks.
I do have one gambling type of question for you. This is kind of like one of those odd bets. How many games before Bosa's out on the injured list?
I mean,
he was questionable going into this week.
I think he is a question. He is just Joey Questionable Bosa. I think that might be his middle name. I would say if we get to
Thanksgiving.
You know what? I'll be not. I was gonna say Halloween. If we get to Halloween, if we get 6 weeks into this season, 6 or 7 weeks into the season, and Joey Bosa's played every game, wow, incredible. I don't see it happening. Really, the question you need to ask, or the person you need to ask that question to, is his mom, because Mama Bosa is the one that tells the boys whether or not they're going to play or not. So that was kind of a cheap shot. I'm sorry, but so that would be my thought process. But with him, you have to kind of have a contingency plan, right? Like, you have to have a situation where, hey, we're more than likely going to lose Bosa at some point this season for maybe some time. We need to have some defensive line depth. So we'll see. And I think, like I said, I think it's going to take 3 or 4 years for Harbaugh really to get his guys in there that he wants. Because if he wants Joshua Palmer as his wide receiver 1, might want to head back to Michigan, sir. But with that being said, time to switch it over to the Russell Wilson Bowl. It is the Denver Broncos. They are heading to Seattle. They will face the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are going to be 6-point favorites. The over-under sits at 42. And yes, I know all those people who are yelling at me. I understand Russell Wilson isn't on either of these teams. Just having a little fun here. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Broncos heading to Seattle.
Oh, I think I made the comparison last week, and I said where the Chiefs have yet to plateau. I don't know if Denver has hit the bottom yet. All I know is since they got rid of that guy named Manning, it hasn't looked good for them. And remember when we the Raiders had this guy named Rich Gannon, and he was leading us to the promised land, and then all of a sudden he wasn't there. And since then, how many guys have been brought in under center to lead us to the promised land? And now what do? They did the Russell Wilson thing. That didn't work out. They have had 2 head coaches over the last 2 seasons. Sean Payton's back again. Now they got, but now we've got the answer to all our prayers, Bo Nix. I have nothing against Bo Nix. I think they're putting him in a real precarious situation because I don't know how good that offensive line is. I don't know if he's not going to take a lot of hits like Derek Carr did when he got sacked 50-something times, 3-4 years ago, whatever it was. So I hope his insurance is paid up for one thing. I don't even know how many good targets he has. His one good target, and the name escapes me, is not even is on the injured reserve list right now. On the defensive side of the ball, they come in as the 30th ranked defense right now. Offensively, they are ranked 29th. That's not promising going into a place like Seattle, where the only big change there, and it's a big change, when everybody runs out of the tunnel and you look over to the side, old Coach Carroll's not going to be there. It's going to be Mike McDonald. So personnel-wise, they've got a lot of familiar faces, but it's a new system under Mike McDonald. They also have a new offensive coordinator with Ryan Grubb. But, that aside, these guys they're all buying into it from what I've read, and they're going to be a dangerous team. They're going to be a little better probably than they have been the last 2 seasons. They'll be competitive week in and week out. They're currently ranked 17th as offense, 20th as defense, but the defense does have a very strong secondary. Maybe not strong enough if you're going up against, the Dolphins or the Chiefs of the world. Definitely strong enough if you're going up against the Denver Broncos. And I just think it's going to be a long day for the rookie. I hope he does well. On the betting side of things, does Seattle cover the 6? Yeah, I think so. Do I always like a half a point just to be sure? Yeah, okay, maybe I'll take the half a point, but I think them covering by a full touchdown is not going to be a problem. Over under at 42 is where I struggle because I can see them the Seahawks putting up 28 points. I just don't know if Denver can put up 14. And that's why I say that might be where that, you got to be careful on that over under. But I think it's going to go under on this one.
I agree with the over under. I like the under here. I watched Bo Nix. I mean, it felt like Bo Nix was in college for 9 years. And he might have been very close to that. It's crazy. Is he one of those? He's like
25, 26 years old.
Yeah. He played in the Auburn Oregon game where, and I could be wrong, but there was another player, and Justin Herbert was the starting quarterback for Oregon, and Bo Nix was the starting quarterback for Auburn, and that might have been his true freshman year, because I do think Bo Nix started as a true freshman. So I'm being a little, mean, but like I said, we're just having some laughs here. It's week 1, but I think he's a good quarterback. It's just, unfortunately, when you play in the Oregon system, it's a lot of passes that don't translate to the NFL. It's not an offense that is obviously ran in the NFL. A lot of what Oregon does is they run 3 or 4 of their wide receivers routes that the only reason they're running those routes is to get those people out of an area. It's almost like there's one person that five wide receivers are running a route, but only one of them is going to be viable. But he's going to be open one-on-one, and the entire other team is going to be on the other side of the field. All he's got to do is make one man miss. That doesn't happen in the NFL. I think he's going to be forced into a lot tighter throws. Personally, I can't believe that Jared Stidham or Zach Wilson couldn't beat him out. I don't think Sean Payton wanted to start Bo Nix. I think Sean Payton was looking for any excuse for the reason you just brought up, by the way, as well. There are no weapons. The only reason I give this team the wide receiver edge, just a little bit to them over the Chargers, at least they have Cortland Sutton. But other than that, there are no weapons on this team. I don't know if it was the owners or what, but I really do think they're doing Bo Nix a disservice. Now, the other side of it, you brought it up when I brought up his 9 years in college. He is 26 or whatever it is. So you don't necessarily have 2 years for him to sit on the bench. Right. All that being said, sorry.
I said, right. You're absolutely right.
You can't, you don't have that opportunity. It's kind of like Brandon Weeden. He was like 28 as a rookie. It's like, well, he's got to start now or he just retire. But on the other side of things, Seattle, obviously they are in the midst of, it's been 2 years or 3 years of big time changes, whether it was Russell Wilson leaving and now it's Pete Carroll. I think they're good enough to be an average to an above average team. I think they will easily take care of business, especially being at home in this one. I see this one easily towards the Seahawks, but I'm with you. I can see the Seahawks doing their part in the over-under, but I don't see the Broncos. Like I said, just looking at their depth chart, I find me a weapon. I dare you. Yeah, it's outside of Cortland Sutton, and it's almost like one of those things. If you only have one weapon, you don't have a weapon, because I'm a layman over here when it comes to football. Well, I could draw up a defensive game plan. If you only have one weapon that I need to really take seriously, I can do a lot of double coverage. I can do a lot of over the top coverage. We'll figure it out. And guess what? The people getting paid a lot of money are a lot smarter than me. So unless someone's coming up and, it's a new Puka Nacua on that roster, I think it's going to be a very long season for Denver. And I do want to walk back my comments I said a few games ago about the Chargers. I don't think they're going to be worse than than the Broncos. I think I was just getting a little worked up. The Broncos are really bad. Just looking at their roster, really bad. But anyways, moving on, this is going to be another interesting one. I think 2 possible playoff teams in the battle for AFC Miami. It is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're heading to the Dolphins. The Dolphins are going to be 3.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 49. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to get us started here. Jacksonville at Miami.
Sometimes in boxing, you have a boxer that has a layoff or has an injury, and he's got to get back into the ring before he starts his run for the championship or to defend his championship. And you set him up with a mediocre or maybe less than mediocre opponent, just so they can get in and get that in the ring fight and kind of make sure all the bugs are worked out of the body and get the feeling again. Boy, I wish that was the case for Trevor Lawrence, because I really like Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville. But unfortunately, the NFL decided they would put Jacksonville against the Dolphins in Miami on opening day. Does not bode well for Jacksonville or Trevor Lawrence. He can do his thing, but he can't do it on the defensive side of the ball. And that Jacksonville defense is going to have a really hot, miserable opening day against Miami in Miami. And Lawrence's afternoon isn't going to be that easy either because the defense for Miami is good enough to keep them competitive against both the run and the pass. So we'll see what Jacksonville might be able to pull off on the other side, on that Miami side. You've got the world-class sprinter, Tyreek Hill, in shape, fired up and ready to go. And Tua's back there. Tua's ready to go. That's my question mark with Miami. It's Tua and the offensive line. I think the offensive line is strong enough to protect him. But, boy, what are they going to do? If he takes one more good hit this season, that could be it. End of the career for that guy. I'm surprised still that after last year, he was able to come back. Was it the smartest thing to do? I don't know. Was it his prerogative and they let him make the call? I don't know. It just seems like, you're going out there and really, really putting the safety of yourself and the well-being of your family on the line with too many hits to the head like he's had. That said, opening day, I think it's going to be Miami does take this one. I like them covering the 3.5. The 49 points, I know they can put up the points. I don't know if Jacksonville can put up the points. But if we can get if you can get a 28-24, there's 52. But if you get 28-21, guess what? Oh,
nice.
It's a push then.
Yeah, this is one of the more, I would say, intriguing games. You kind of hit the nail on the head. Like Jacksonville, I really do think they are a team that's kind of being slept on a bit. And, for good reason. But I don't necessarily agree with the Trevor Lawrence contract. However, in modern day NFL, you have to pay your quarterback. And it's easier to just pay the money and hope you can get through the 5 years and you win a little bit rather than say, you know what, no, go walk and we're going to go try and find a quarterback again in the draft. Obviously, Jacksonville was a laughingstock for quite a while before they got Trevor Lawrence. And I do think he's made good progress. And I mean, no one is a bigger fan of Doug Peterson than myself. However, yeah, this is not a matchup they want to be dealing with. I did look up the weather in Miami. Yeah, 90 degrees on Sunday with 70% humidity. So
there you go. Bring the bananas.
But I feel like that's a pretty, I don't want to say mild day in Miami, but that's not crazy. And it's also Jacksonville. Or these players also either live or, train at the very least in Jacksonville. So you do have that. But one thing, and I don't know, Raider Jim, you've probably seen pictures of it, or maybe it's been talked about, and I don't think it's talked about enough. The Dolphins stadium has an incredible home field advantage because when the sun is up, obviously, the Dolphins sideline is always in the shade and the visiting sideline is always in the sun.
Genius.
Brilliant. And now they do have the people that put up the, things or whatever, but it's just, that's a brilliant piece of home field advantage right there that every time someone plays in Miami early in the season, that's what I always think of is they put them in the sun on purpose. So I am with you. I think Miami is one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the AFC, and I don't think Jacksonville will be ready now. Early in the season, you never know. But with Tua and Tyreek, and also that Miami defense, they lost a lot of pieces towards the end of the year last year, and it really hurt that team. And, for the most part, people are back. So, it's going to be a very, very fun game to watch. But I do like the over as well. I think we're going to see some really, really good scoring. But moving on to our final game we're going to cover in depth. It is Sunday Night Football, a rematch of last year's playoff, one of the cooler stories in all of sports. The Los Angeles Rams, they are heading to Detroit to face the Lions. So Stafford returning home again. The Lions are going to be 3.5-point favorites. The over-under is 50.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Rams at Detroit, Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, Detroit comes in as the number 22 forecasted defense. And quite honestly, I think that's a bad shot as far as, they base that on, of course, last year's performance and some of the moves they've made in the offseason. I think that defense is going to be much improved. I'm sure everybody put their heads together after their run last year and said, hey, here's the deal. Stronger defense, we go even further than we did this year. 23-24. Now 24-25, again, better defense. We're going to go all the way. We're really going to push people. And the Rams, on the other hand, their defense isn't what it used to be. They've lost a lot of people, or enough people in enough key positions. They aren't going to get the pressure like they used to get. And you give Stafford enough time, forget it, man. It's a done deal. And this is going to be the Sunday night game at home for Detroit. Los Angeles, they have a good offense, but again, I think you're going to see where the defense for Detroit has made their improvements in the offseason, and I think they're going to pose some problems for the Los Angeles Rams. So the Detroit to cover the 3.5, I think so. I think they win by 4, maybe even a full 6. 50.5 points, that I'm not sure of, because again, I don't know that the Rams are going to be able to come out and put up as many points. It would have to be 28-24 to get 52 points. It could be 27-23, but even that only gets you to 50. It doesn't get you that half a point. So I'm going to go under on this one, even though it should be a shootout. I don't think the Rams are going to have the offensive firepower that they may have had in the past.
Yeah, the Rams going to look a little different defensively without Aaron Donald. Just kind of looking over their roster. Defensively, Tre'Davious White, good corner. Jared Verse was incredible at Florida State, but he's a rookie. And Byron Young is a good linebacker, but you're not seeing that dominant Rams defense that we're used to. The offensive side, plenty of weapons. I do like the Rams to cover this 3.5, though. I think it's going to be a situation of two teams that don't want to put too much out there. I think both could make the case that, hey, we might play them later on in the year or in the playoffs or something like that. I think it's going to be a pretty conservative game. I don't think anybody's really going to try and run away with this to the best of their ability.
Right.
So I do like the Rams to hold on, or to cover, I should say, the 3.5. And then I do like the under as well. Like I said, I think we got enough just kind of feeling out, and I don't think Sean McVay wants to show everything right now. Dan Campbell certainly doesn't. So I think it's just a kind of a vanilla offense, maybe vanilla plus, if that's a thing. But if this was week 15, I think it would be a much different story. But week 1, conservative, I think we stay under. But those are the games that we are going to kind of go into in depth as we kind of wrap this up. There are some others. I'll just kind of run through them. Arizona will be 6.5-point underdogs at Buffalo, 47.5 there. Carolina heads to New Orleans to face the Saints. The Saints will be 4-point favorites, 41.5. Houston will be 2.5-point favorites on the road when they face Indy. That over under is 48. New England, wow, it's been a while since we see this, but New England will head to Cincinnati. The Bengals, biggest spread of the weekend, 7.5 points, the over-under of 40.5. Pittsburgh at Atlanta. The Falcons are going to be 3.5-point favorites there with an over-under of 41.5. Tennessee at Chicago, rookie quarterback, young team. Bears going to be 4-point favorites in that one. 44.5 is the over-under there. And finally, Monday Night Football, the New York Jets will head to Santa Clara to face the San Francisco 49ers. Niners are going to be 4.5-point favorites on that one. 43.5 is the over-under there. I don't really have any thoughts there, Raider Jim. It's so early on. Do you have any thoughts on those games?
First game, Arizona-Buffalo. I'm interested to see how well Buffalo plays because, again, beat up. They got hit by the injury bug as bad as Minnesota did, I think. Yeah. So I'm curious to see. Again, they are lucky. Their draw, Arizona, well, yeah, they should handle that easily, which is good. I'm also looking forward to see how dynamic is Houston going to be.
Yeah,
I think they're going to be pretty damn dynamic myself. So that they're only a 2.5 point, even though it's on the road. Let's see what happens. Same with Cincinnati. They're playing New England, so they're up 7.5. But let's see how well they really come out and execute. They're kind of like, that's like playground bully situation. They should be able to just go out and just, push people around and do whatever they want. Pittsburgh, is this going to be the beginning of the end for Pittsburgh on week 1? Wow. It's just, that's an interesting situation over there. Very excited about the Chicago Bears to see how well this kid plays and leads the team. I think that team's going to be fun to watch. And that Monday night game, here's the situation. Does Aaron Rodgers have too many distractions? Coming back close to the old alumni groups and even in Cal, where is it? He ended up in Carlsbad or somewhere like that during one of the playoff rounds a couple of years ago. They found out that he was in a rental house down here and then didn't play too well the next day up in LA. So we'd be curious to see what happens when Aaron Rodgers finally takes the field again. He'll probably be the story just because he's Aaron Rodgers, but I think all the spotlight is going to be on Brock Purdy. Myself, what's your feeling on that game?
Rodgers, the Jets and Rodgers. You could sit here and say I came from the future. I've seen how the NFL season goes. The New York Jets win the Super Bowl, or the New York Jets go 2-15, and 4 or 5 games into the season, Aaron Rodgers in a press conference just said, "Bleep this, I'm out," and no one saw him again. So anything in between. So essentially everything. The Jets are the ultimate, I guess, wild card, but like you could tell me any situation and about this team, and I'd be like, yeah, you know what, I could believe that.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. That sounds about right. That makes a little bit of sense. That's gonna be an interesting one. You want to talk about a tough draw? Goodness gracious! Opening night at San Francisco. Coming off of a year in which you lost your entire your quarterback week 1. Well, here comes arguably the best defense in football. Here we are, Monday Night Football.
Yeah, they got the poster that shows up every week.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got a lot of friends there that show up as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Ayuk situation, that was a crazy, it was almost like, well, it's only a question of what team he gets traded to. Not if he gets traded, it's a matter of when, not if, and then get an alert. Oh, he just signed, he's the highest paid wide receiver. Like, that took a turn. So that seems to be all done. But the one game that kind of on that list, and you kind of hit on it as well, the Bears are, if I could watch every Bears game and it wouldn't affect my Eagles watching, I would do it. I'm so intrigued by this team. Yeah. There is a chance that we could see, we could be looking at a really transcendent quarterback. And I think that's something. He's got a lot of weapons. Of all the young quarterbacks, I think he has the most weapons. And one final thing on Houston, it's going through every team's rosters. Houston has some guys. It's unbelievable. Sometimes in the offseason, you get kind of overwhelmed with all of it. They have a lot of really good players. I think they're going to do some things. CJ Stroud, is the sophomore slump real? We will find out, but it's going to be an incredible week 1. I'm so excited that we're here. And as we always kind of remind everyone and ourselves as well, it's going to go by very quickly. So just enjoy it. But Raider Jim, final thoughts for this episode of the NFL Weekly.
Time is valuable, folks. I was in Costco today and I walked down a row of Christmas trees. So just everybody just remember how important time is. But seriously, I guess the final thoughts would be is now with everybody back in school, COVID on the rise, everybody just remember to be cautious, exercise on safety side. Don't compromise yourself or anybody else. Tailgating is starting again. Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, all the party. Don't drink and drive, whether it's a holiday or not. Take care of yourself, those around you, and all your family members.
Amen. I'm going to piggyback on that one. Unfortunately, last week, the hockey world lost
Oh my
Well,
God.
the world lost two people, but the hockey world lost Johnny Hockey and his brother Matthew Gaudreau. The Gaudreaus, unfortunately, were struck and killed by a suspected drunk driver. I will throw that out there, and it hasn't been anything, but suspected drunk driver. They were in town to be groomsmen in their sister's wedding, and in a split second, everything changed. Now, the Gaudreaus, very sad story. Unfortunately, that sad story plays out hundreds of times a day or a week or whatever. We don't know their names, but it's just as devastating to that family and the friends and the people around them as it was when Johnny Gaudreau was announced, or that when we got the news that Johnny Gaudreau and his brother had passed. So, we get closer to the holiday season, and obviously with football rolling around, I understand nothing better than having a nice cold beer and watching the game. Do it responsibly, please. It's out of control. I mean, it seems like the final thoughts write themselves, and they all kind of end up to please be responsible. Don't drink and drive. If you want to hurt yourself, I don't think you should, and I would want you to get some help. But you know what? It's your prerogative. Do not make decisions that put other people's lives in risk. Hopefully we come to a day where we can go, it's kind of like the horse racing last year. Unfortunately, we kind of started the horse racing. It seemed like every other episode with some bad news. This year, not so much. And I'm knocking on wood as I say that. Hopefully, maybe next year we can kind of take a step back and go, you know what? We haven't had to kind of do our normal bi-weekly PSA to not drink and drive. Hopefully that kind of gets under control. But with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly here on the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to y'all very soon. Take care.
Peace out.